Welcome back to the Against All Odds, the Less Than 1% Chance podcast with your host, Maria Ponte, where we will hear stories of incredible people thriving against all odds. And my hope is that we can all see how life is always happening for us, even when we are the less than 1% chance. Hey, friends! Welcome back to Against All Odds, the Less Than 1% Chance with your host, Maria Aponte. I am so excited because this interview today is somebody that I've known since she literally was born. And this is my little cousin, Dimary. And she is 20 years old, but I feel like in this 20-year-old, chronological age, it's this soul that has been through a lot. She was born into a situation where she had to kind of grow up a little quick, and we'll talk more into that, but I'm so excited to talk to her. We had kind of a little porch talk last week, and I was like, oh my God, you need to come on my podcast. So I'm so excited to introduce you to my little cousin, Dimary. Hi, I'm so excited to do this. Okay, so give us a little bit of background, why did I mention that you had to grow up quickly? Because I feel like that is not something that is very normal in just, I guess, in general. So go ahead.
Yes. So hi guys, I'm Dimary. I was born into a family of two deaf parents. I am the only child, so I don't know how my parents lived before me. I knew they were able to handle it, but I guess when I was born, I was a miracle child. My mom struggled having babies. She had me at 39, so my parents are a bit older. It was definitely a challenge growing up because I learned ASL when I was 1 year old. I have a video of me signing at 1 year old. My first two languages was Spanish and sign language. And when I could talk, my parents used to use that, right? So we would be in grocery stores, and then if they had a question, I had to ask it for them. I was basically their personal interpreter for free. And I guess as I grew up even older, the dependency just grew stronger and stronger and stronger. I would miss a lot of school to go to their appointments. Anything like phone calls, I'm interpreting. Doctor appointments, I'm interpreting. School counseling, when they had a parent teacher meeting, I'm interpreting. So really I had an advantage at that point. But anyways.
You did.
But yeah, everything was just that. And even as a 20-year-old, it's a lot because my parents have a lot of doctor appointments. They've been dealing with some health stuff. And it's heavy. It's heavy. What I always say is I feel like I'm living for three people because I'm focused on their stuff. And then I'm really attached to my parents in a sense because that's all I had growing up. That's all I know. I guess it's how a mother feels about their child. They're like, I gotta take care of my baby. I gotta make sure they're okay. And even when I'm out of town, I'm like, hey parents, are you guys okay? How are you? And they're like, we're good. And I'm like, okay. I have that attachment, not that they're my kids, of course they're my parents, but that dependency, it just puts a lot of responsibility on me and then it weighs heavy on me. So yeah, I just grew up having to do so many things. I learned how to pay bills young. I learned how to manage money young. I learned how to, communicate to doctors and all those things at a young age. I used to have friends, they didn't know how to make phone calls to making a nail appointment. I'm like, you just do this. And they're like, I'm not used to this. I'm like, oh yeah, you're right.
It's not the normal.
Right, sorry. So it was definitely challenging, and it still is. I feel like it's even more challenging now because I am young. I'm married. I'm recently married. So having to focus on my household and then focus on my parents' household, it's a lot because I got to worry about our finances, their finances. I have to tell them, okay, we got a budget this month. We got to hold it together. And then it's hard because my parents, I feel like they see it as my child's telling me what to do. And it's you're kind of asking me to help you. I have to tell you these things. So it's challenging. There's a lot of things and responsibilities that come with it for sure.
Yeah, I remember. And I think that this is I remember when you were a baby, and maybe this was the product of not being heard.
Yeah.
She used to have these tantrums.
I did.
And it was like, and I was like, oh my God, like, so my daughter and her are only a year apart, but it was like she would have these tantrums, and at that moment I was like, oh my goodness. However, looking back, I look at that and I'm like, well, since she was a baby, she wasn't heard.
Right.
So like most babies, you cry and your parent comes immediately. However, for her, it was more like, I need to escalate this level of crying so that I'm heard. And so
Yes.
it makes so much sense. But that has got to be so difficult because you don't have the chance to fully be a kid, and it's immediate responsibility. And
Yes.
you have some family that did help, and that's amazing. However, the day to day was on you. And I look at that now, and how do you feel now being removed somewhat from that day to day? How did you transition?
Oh, that's a really good question. Transitioning was definitely hard. I've lived in that household for my whole life. Like I didn't move out after high school. Like I was there, and then I'm going through college right now. So like getting married, moving out, being in this place, and not that, again, I don't want to pinpoint that my parents are bad parents, but that household there was a lot of toxic things that went on. So being removed from that, I'm in a house of quietness. I'm in a house of like no one's knocking on my door like, hey, I need this, hey, I need that, this happened, that happened. So being here, it's weird. I find it hard to just sit in silence because I'm so used to the rush of things. I'm so used to having to do something, and it still is that way. But I feel like I have more control of when I should do those things or when I can do those things. I
Yeah.
choose to do those things. And so it was definitely hard. And then I feel like, when parents are like, oh, my baby's moving out, it's that same thing. I'm like, oh, I have to leave them here. I hope they're okay. Like they're older. I hope, nothing happens. I had all these thoughts going on, but you have to be attached. Like you cannot be attached forever. And I've learned so much. I've learned a lot, and now I feel I'm processing all the things that went on, which is very healthy for me and my parents because I feel once I moved out, we definitely got a lot closer. My dad and I had a really bad relationship growing up, and it's crazy because everyone's seeing us and they're like, "You guys are twins. I love you guys." My dad's such a hyper person. I'm a hyper person, so we're kind of the same person. But no one knew the darkness him and I went through. And so when I moved out, that relationship bettered, and I'm so grateful for it. I value my parents at this point because when I was living there, not that's not a lot now, it still is, but when I was living there, it was an overload. It was suffocating. Yes, perfect word. It was suffocating, and I didn't value them as much because I just felt like their servant. I was like, see, like I can't love on them. I don't feel that love for them. Not that I didn't. I just didn't feel it. Like I was just like, oh, like they're too much. And so now that I moved out, I don't necessarily feel those things. It is a lot. And sometimes I'm like, okay, boundary. I can't do this.
How easy has it been to put boundaries?
It's not easy. It's not because I'm such a yes person. Like I'm just like, yes, yes, okay, I could do it. Like I feel like it really is impossible to do this alone. Like if I didn't have my relationship with God, I would be a wreck. I don't know where I would be. But without that, I don't know where I would be. But when it comes to this, like it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy putting up boundaries. It's hard when you just want to serve people, when you just want to, okay, like you want to carry everyone's burdens, and then at the end of the day, you're burnt out and you're like, what about me? Like, I don't feel good. I don't feel fulfilled. I am exhausted. And then when you do that for years and years and years, and then you have to literally force yourself to be like, I can't do this, it's hard. It's so hard because I feel guilty. I feel like I'm disappointing them. I feel like I'm letting them down. And then sometimes there'll be guilt trip, like, like, oh, like, you don't love us. Like, you're supposed to help us. And I'm like, we're deaf. We need help. And I'm like, I know, but I need help too. I'm not okay. So it's not easy, but it's necessary. Like, you have to, because if not, I won't be able to take care of myself. My head is just, I'm running around like a chicken without a head. I'm just running.
Will you go into a little bit of the tough times you had with your dad?
Yes. Yes. So when I was younger, my dad struggled a lot with alcohol. And when I look back now, his upbringing was horrible. He wasn't born in Puerto Rico, and he was born into poverty. My dad slept in the basement, and he slept with all types of animals, cats, dogs, all those things. And he also had other disabled siblings. So it was just difficult for him. And I don't know, when he talks about these things, it doesn't emotionally affect him, but I don't think he realizes it, how damaging his environment was. And because when he explains it, it's normal to him. And I'm like, that's not normal. Someone shouldn't put their cigarette ashes on you, So it was tough. It was tough growing up with my dad. There was a lot of abuse, verbal abuse, physical abuse. And I had to grow up to see a lot of things that was traumatizing. I don't know. I grew up to be this aggressive kid, and no wonder why. I feel like I was always in defense mode. I saw things that I wish I would have never saw. And yeah, it's crazy. There was just a lot of things. And I don't know what it was. I feel like since I was a young girl, he just had these high expectations on me. Like, for example, for softball, I used to play softball. And if I didn't do well, you're horrible. Like, you should not play the game anymore. You're this, you're that. And then I just always felt diminished. And then next day, I love you, daughter. You're everything. And growing up in that emotional roller coaster of I'm not good enough to, okay, maybe he loves me to stay. And then being on guard, I wonder how he's going to come home today. It was always an emotional roller coaster. And then as I got older, I got more bold. Like, I didn't care. I was like, you know what? You're going to be like this. I'm going to come at you 10 times harder. And not in a disrespectful way, but I'm not going to keep letting him run me over. I'm going to stand up for myself. And it's crazy to say to your dad, Yeah. So I would stick up for myself. I'll stick up for my mother. And I feel like the more he saw that, the more he respected us, because I feel like when you're dealing with alcoholism and all those things, you're not in touch with reality. You're just on a whole different planet. You're coping with your emotions with that substance, but it's really worsening you. So I guess the more that I pushed, like, hey, this is not right. You shouldn't say this. You shouldn't do this. He wouldn't care in that moment, but I knew it was in his head.
Took in.
So yeah,
it sunk in.
It sunk in. I feel like as months pass by, as years pass by, as I'm getting older, as I'm drawing away, because I started to shift away from them. I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to see this anymore. I'm going to go play outside more. And, all those things. But he has transformed. Oh my gosh. It's crazy. Like, to see how he is now and to see how he was then. Because my dad was always a sweet person. He just had his horrible, dark struggles, as we all do at one point in time.
Yeah.
And so for a while, I would say I literally hated my dad. In my mind, I hope he dies. It's horrible. I was like, I hope he dies. I don't want to see this man again. I want my mom to have a man that loves her. I used to have all these thoughts. And then I grew up, and like, as I'm older, and now that I'm a Christian and I have my beliefs, and I just see it as, okay, God forgave me. Who am I to not forgive my dad? And that took a while, because I was like, my dad deserves everything bad coming his way. The things that he did to me and my mom. And I just had to have a moment. I'm like, who am I to not forgive this man? And let alone, he's a human being. He had every reason to just do even worse, and he did really bad things. Like, I'm not trying to cover it. That is not the point here. The point is, he's human, and I learned how to forgive and love because of him. He's my father. So now when other people do me wrong or hurt me bad, I have that heart of, I forgive you. I love you. Like, you're human. Let's walk through this together, type of thing. And I don't think I would have been able to do that, for one, without the love of God, and number two, without my dad, because that was my dad. Like the things that he did, it's crazy. That's my father. Like that is my father. So it was hard to walk through. It was, but I learned so much from it. And like you always say, I wouldn't be who I am without that situation. Like I just wouldn't. I wouldn't.
Yeah. It makes you dig in deep to your strength and the purpose. There's always going to be a purpose behind it. And it's crazy because from the outside looking in, I would have never seen that. Like I would have knowing my cousin is her mom, knowing my cousin, I would have thought that she was the one that was the aggressor because she is like a tough cookie. And I remember when she was in karate or something like that.
Oh my gosh.
Like I was like, this chick is like, oh my gosh. So from the outside looking in, it's crazy to me to hear that that is something that you experienced because he was the funny and like he was always so hyper and happy and all this thing at family functions, but behind closed doors, it's so crazy how things shift. And as much as you stated that he talks about these things and they don't emotionally affect him, that still had an emotional scar on him growing up. And so he, because they're in the generation of not dealing with these emotions and these scars and things that they experience, it just kind of piles up. And then if you have the addictive personality of, you know, whatever it is, it could be it could be any type of addiction. I have a, you know, I come from family that has struggled with addiction, and so I know a little bit about it. And so I feel like when you continue to push down all of those feelings, you go to something that helps you numb those feelings, because it's just like, it's like a volcano about to erupt.
And I feel like that's exactly what happened with my dad. Like his outburst would be for no reason. So I knew it was something in him that was built up.
Yeah. It's so crazy because obviously in the time you're not seeing this and you're not understanding it. And you're like, who is this monster?
Literally,
And then like you step away from it a little bit, and it, you know, shakes you, like you see it all in a different perspective, in a different way. And so I know that crazy wedding season happened, and then what came after that?
What do you mean by that? I'm sorry.
In terms of like just moving away, right? And you're adjusting. What kind of what happened when you were then in silence and then had to deal with all of the things happening?
Yes. So wedding season was very lonely. It was hard. I've always had this outlook of wedding season being like families together, we're happy and white dresses and flowers. And for me, it was like hell. It was horrible. It was hard. Like I felt like in my own wedding season, the time where I'm supposed to be, me and my fiance were supposed to be at Joy, we were suffering. Like we were suffering from so much hurt, and like we didn't feel heard. And it was our wedding. So it was very hard walking through it. We got through it. We ended up really planning the whole wedding ourselves. And of course, we had little help from people, but I feel like it was so much to take on for us too. But hey, we got through it. We're married. We're lovely. But after all, dealing with those pains, dealing with words that was said and things that happened behind our backs and stuff, I feel like after the wedding, of course, we were happy. We were joyful. Like, this is what we wished and desired for. We prayed for this. And what was supposed to be super joyful, super honeymoon stage, as people say, it was, what's the word? It was just so, it was a bit downcast. Like
Mhm.
that word, I feel like that's the word. Like we were happy, but then it was just like, like it was like a breather after the heavy season we had. And that was
Yeah.
the only time we could breathe. It was like, okay, it's over with. Like even
It's
on wedding
over.
night, when we left, like we were in the car and we're like, whew, it's over. Like we're done. Like we got this over with. And so it was, again, it was another season of processing. I feel like in life, despite the situation, we're always processing something from a situation. And so that was us. We were processing our after wedding season, and like it was our first time living together. It was our first time moving out from our parents' house. So we had to learn a lot about communication. And for me, I struggled with communication. Every little argument, it could be something so stupid. It could be the littlest thing, the stresses of life, or, you know, whatever the case may be. I would just shut down. Like, I don't want to talk. And I used to be able to do that in my mom's house. Like, I would, if they're arguing with me, I won't say a thing. I'll be like, okay, go to my room, shut down. And then so I, not knowing, I'm thinking that would be okay. You know, we have a little dispute, and then I could be like, okay, are you done? All right, I'm gonna go to the room. And for him, he's like, no, 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 no. We gotta talk about this. And then he's always been that way. I've just always struggled with that. And then living together, it's more, because you can't go to sleep angry. You shouldn't go to sleep angry. You should communicate. You should end on a good note, even if you don't agree to disagree, and then move on from there. And so with him, my husband, Christian, he was like, no, we got to talk about this. We got to work through it. And so him, for me, like, he's cultivating this home of peace, this home of just health, like what a home is supposed to be. A home is supposed to be safe. You're supposed to feel secure.
Healthy.
You could trust, healthy, exactly, a healthy household. And so being married to him has definitely exemplified that. It's not easy. It's not like sunshine and rainbows over here. We're both young. We're figuring out our careers and college and all these things in the midst of loving each other, in the midst of taking care of our families. It's a lot, but it's amazing for us. We love it. But yeah, I've learned so much being married, and I can enjoy silence. I crave silence now. I'm just like, I don't want to do anything. I just want to sit in this. And I feel like that silence has taught me to process, like, day by day, moment by moment. I've dealt with depression and anxiety for majority of my life, and sitting in that silence is scary sometimes, because you're like, wow, I didn't know I was having these thoughts. Wow, I forgot about this situation. Now that I think about it, oh my goodness, I need to walk through that. I need to talk to someone about this. That silence, I needed it in order to officially step in my healing. I feel like I would step into my healing, and then I would step back, like, no, I'm not ready to get into that. No, maybe another time. It's not time. And now I'm forced to. I'm forced to, because of the mental health stuff that I'm dealing with, the physical health stuff I'm dealing with. I feel like I've lost myself, but I found myself, if that makes sense. And I know in life we're always finding out more about ourselves, because we're changing. We're humans. We're always evolving.
Yes.
And so being in this time, it's been challenging, but it's rewarding, because like I'm just learning so much about myself, and I'm learning what it is to have healthy relationships. Like, even with friendships, I always struggled with friendships, because I felt like I had no tolerance. I heard someone was gossiping or this and that, I'm automatically like, Josh, I'm leaving. I'm not dealing with this. Rather than talking with that person, like, hey, what's going on? Or, you know, I just had no tolerance. Now I'm learning grace and patience, and I've always been kind, but I'm learning more kindness in my mind too, you know, because I would showcase that kindness to a person, but in my mind, I don't want nothing to do with you. I'm good. It's overall, it's a lot of learning, a lot of growing. And although I grew up early, I feel like I have the mind of a 30-year-old, but I'm still growing up. I'm growing up majorly. I'm 20. I have these woman hormones I'm dealing with. It's a lot.
It's a whole lot, isn't it?
It's a lot. So yeah, but it's beautiful. The journey is beautiful, and I'm super grateful for it.
Yeah, I think that it's so crazy because, and I was talking to a friend about this today, actually. When we go through traumas, those traumas, those emotions stay stuck in our body somewhere.
Yeah.
It's the craziest thing, but they stay stuck in our body. And it stays at that age. So you have this trauma, let's say when you're 10 years old, there's still a 10-year-old you inside with these feelings that have not been dealt with. And so they cause physical ailments. And until you start processing those emotions and those feelings and that trauma, you'll feel in your body physical pain. And I remember I had an experience. So I was sexually abused when I was 16. And so that stayed in my body. And I had this experience years ago. I didn't even know what this was. My friend, I was in the travel industry, and my friend, we brought a lot of money into her hotel. And so she gave me this gift of this massage at her hotel. It was called a healing energy massage. And I was like, oh, that sounds awesome. And she's like, just wait. And I'm like, okay. It was the most mind-blowing thing.
Wow.
Because, and I didn't know what it was at the time. Now I'm so aware, and that's something that I'm so into. However, at the time I didn't know what it was. And this lady, she had like sound bowls, and it was just awesome. And it was all very airy and awesome. And then, so I sit down, I just told her, just be careful with my lower back. I can never get a massage in my lower back. It hurts so bad. So if you're going to do anything, from middle of my back up and then my legs, great, but do not touch my lower back because it hurts to the touch. And she was like, yeah, no worries, blah, blah, blah. She didn't even touch me. She just kind of glided her hands over me. And she was like, oh, have you been sexually traumatized? And like, not even much of anything, didn't even push on my lower back. And I lost it. It was a full hour of crying. She did massage and later found out that it's called Reiki, but it's healing energy. And it's something that we all have the gift of. I give Reiki, I give healing energy when I hug my kids because I want the best for them. Your intention that you put behind it. And so it was so crazy because after that, I could get a lower back massage without a problem. I didn't have a lower back issue anymore. Wow. And it was that stuck feeling, that stuck emotion and trauma in my lower back. It was actually in my lower, like, right hip. But it was the most craziest thing because after that, I could talk about what happened to me without a problem. It was just mind-blowing, I'm telling you. And I just feel like so you went through this trauma at 10 or however old you were, and that's somewhere stuck inside you.
I feel like I had a similar experience as you, but I can explain it after you're done.
So I feel like that's somewhere stuck inside you, right? And so until you intentionally put healing towards that area or what situation you went through, you won't be able to stop the pain.
Right.
And you have to walk through it. And I think that your silence is where you'll be able to do that, where that clarity comes in, and like being able to listen to your body in that silence is going to be so key. And the fact that you at 20 are learning this, I didn't learn this until much later than that. I feel like that sets you up to have a more fulfilling and purposeful life from a younger age than having to wait longer.
Yes. No, I agree. I had a similar experience to you. So for me, I think God just aligns people in your life. And for me, I grew up in a Catholic background, and honestly, I didn't care about it. I just did it because my family attended, and you know, I just did. Like to me, I was like, okay, yeah, whatever. And then I had this friend who would always invite me to a church. And I was like, I'm Catholic, girl. Like, I was like, okay, girl. And she was just always persistent, not in a forceful way, but she's like, hey, girl, we have this event, this event. And so, long story short, I ended up going. And this is so funny. That night that I went, the pastor was talking about sexual abuse, drugs. I mean, abuse, drugs, sexual abuse, pornography, whatever, everything in the book. And then I'm like, why? There was a tug at my heart. And then I was like, oh no, we're not doing this today. I'm not about to air out my stuff. And so I went the first week and I was like, okay, nice, I guess. Because I didn't know what it was to have a relationship with God. I really didn't. All I knew was religion. So next week, my friend's like, are you coming? I'm like, yeah. I was like, in my heart, I knew I needed it, but I had that ego, like,
Yeah.
I'm not doing this.
Yep.
I'm not doing this.
Like, yep. I know the feeling.
Yes. And then the next week, same thing. Abuse, sex, drugs. And then I'm like, and those were things I dealt with in my teenage years. I always tell people, I'm like, I lived my 20s in my teenage years. I was in places I shouldn't have been in. I lost my virginity at a very young age. I did drugs at a very young age. Like, this was not good. So, anyways, I went and same thing, talked about those things. And when I tell you, I swear, they do this thing called altar calls. People are up there to pray for you. And I promise I did not get up. It was like the spirit in me. I got up, went to the altar, and I told the person, I think I know who she is. And I just said, this is everything he said I'm dealing with. And I really need to let this go. And I just broke. Oh my gosh. I just broke. I was on my knees. I gave it all out. Like, I screamed, cried. I did whatever I needed to do. And I feel like God just works in beautiful ways in any setting. It could be a person, it could be a movie, it could be anything, but God is going to reach you. And so for me, that was what happened with me. I felt pulled. And then 4 years later, here I am. I'm a Christian. I used to be a leader. Right now, I'm just stepping down to focus on my mental health, but it has changed my life. And that helped me so much on my outlook. Again, on the love of God. Like, I see that for everyone. And so without God, I don't know where I would be. Truly, like, I've had such horrible experiences and like after, my relationship with God, and I don't think I would have been able to get through it without him. Like, truly. So yeah, I had that similar experience of like healing. Like, I didn't feel like, of course I wasn't officially healed that day, but like you said, I felt comfortable to talk about the things I went through. I was like, I'm not ashamed of this. Like, I got to experience that, and I get to help others to walk through it when they go through it, or whatever the case may be. And so it's a beautiful thing. So yeah, I had the same experience as us.
So I found a video on my Facebook memories of me speaking 4 years ago on a Facebook Live, saying, oh my gosh, I just got interviewed for the first time on a podcast, and watch out because you'll see one of my own soon. That was 4 years ago.
Oh my God.
In 2019. And so the fact that like it took me 4 years, but
you did it. You started. But
I did it, and I feel so aligned. And I feel this is like everything that I've gone through. And in the last few episodes, I've had conversations about some of the things that I've gone through.
Right.
But everything that I have gone through gave this purpose. This is the purpose behind it. I get to now not only share the things that I've gone through and show people that I've been able to get past it, survive it, thrive from it, find purpose from it.
Yeah.
But I get to now showcase other people that have done the same thing, that are finding purpose, are walking through it, that are, beating the odds. Because let's be real, right now in this day and age, after COVID especially, there has been such a huge uptick in mental health in our younger generation.
Yeah. It's
And
and I feel like mental health has always been it's always been a thing, but now as generations grow, like there's just more of an awareness.
yes.
And now it's even for the older generations, their eyes are starting to open like, oh, this is a real thing. So yeah, I agree.
And it's crazy. So I've always been very open to the healing process since I was 19 years old. That was when I first talked about what happened to me at 16. So I've always been very open to healing, but I know that even my generation are so resistant to like therapy and to working on those things because that's stirring up a lot of things that they don't want to work through. And so I really like admire the openness of the younger generation because they are willing to speak up and talk about it and kind of are more open to therapy and whatever modality it is, but healing because it's not easy. And I remember like if I would have, I don't know, I just think that it really is very brave of you to be able to speak up about it because I know that at 20 years old I may not have been ready to do that. And the fact that like you are like actively working on getting better, I think that is powerful, and it's something to be admired because there is, you know, even the generation right before mine that won't touch any type of healing with a 10-foot pole. Like, and it's so sad because you see it, you feel like I'm watching this older person
I know.
like throw a tantrum
Literally.
like a child, and they can't even like process the fact that that's just a lot of pain that's inside of them.
And they don't realize that
Yeah.
that's not normal.
Yeah.
Like there's definitely things you have to walk through, but they don't see it. They
Yeah.
don't see it.
Yeah. And it's so I applaud you for that because I think that being vulnerable is something to be admired, and I think that that's what I feel like that's what God intends for us, right? So we walk through these things that are really, really tough. He walks with us through it and sees us through it, and he wouldn't have put that path in front of us if he didn't know that we were able to get through it. And I truly 100% feel that has the purpose of us being able to then speak about what we've been through and go through and what we're struggling with, so that can help someone else say, damn, me too, I'm dealing with that too, and I need to like figure out all of this too. And if she's doing it, maybe that means that I can too. And it's giving hope. And so thank you for being that example. I think it's very powerful. I think that you're an amazing role model to my children, and it's hard because my two younger ones didn't have someone to look up to because their older sister struggled with her mental health. So where her mentality might be younger than her chronological age, at least they see you, which is not much older, like looking to persevere past the struggle. And it's amazing to have like a young person that they can admire. And and like really connect with. So thank you for that. So
Of
kind of
course.
in the theme of Against All Odds, what do you feel is your Against All Odds story?
Yeah, I mean, it's really the sum of the whole thing we've been talking about. I was born to two deaf parents. I had to grow up early. I didn't get to enjoy a normal childhood with toys and things. I had to worry about phone calls. Dealt with mental health at a very young age, and I'm so thankful that I didn't know what a lot of things were, because I could have hurt myself or any of those things. And the fact that I'm still here after all the times I've wanted to give up, literally give up, I'm still here, and I'm just a product of perseverance, and not on my own terms, on God's terms, because again, I could not do this without God. And even the things that I went through in my teenage years, like I could have fell into heavy drugs, could have been heavy in addiction. I could have been somewhere, and there were so many possibilities of, I could have went to the left, but I went to the right way, you know? So
Yeah.
I hope that answered your question.
Absolutely. I think that I admire that about you. I admire, again, from a close outside looking in, I feel like you pushing past everything to be in such a loving relationship with. I love your husband. I think he's awesome.
Aww.
And I know that my kids absolutely adore him. And that says a lot. Like to be in a relationship with a person that is allowing you to build a healthy, functional relationship, especially coming from something that was not very much.
Right.
I think that that's amazing. So it is, I definitely feel like that's against all odds, because you
It
chose I'm going to do this in spite of what I've come from.
Yes.
So
Yeah, I've always had that in mind. Like I would always tell myself, I might not, for example, in the future, I'm not going to be the perfect parent. No one is, but I'm going to be one of the best parents. Like I always declare that over myself. I'm going to be like, I would not do these things, because I feel like every generation does that. Everyone learns from their parents. Like, okay, I'll input that. I will not input this.
Yep.
So, and I think it's a beautiful thing. So it's definitely helped a lot. And then, I feel like in this society, especially, everyone wants to be a victim. Not everyone. I don't want to say everyone, but there's a lot of situations where you are a victim. You went through it, and you're severely hurt by it, but you don't have to live your life that way.
Yeah.
And so for me, like it was that mindset change, because I was always like, I just want comfort. And although those things are necessary, like we just have to walk through it. Like we cannot dwell in the state of victimization. It's because you're always gonna go through life looking for offense, looking for, like you have your offense radar, like, oh, they looked at me some type of way, they think I'm this. No, you're just in your head. Like, it's okay. So I don't know. It's, we got through it. We're here, and we're still learning and growing.
Absolutely. And life is always happening for you and not to you.
And
it's
not
just the way
to
you look at it.
I love that you say that.
Thank you. It's definitely not mine. So I know that my mindset coach got it from Tony Robbins, and I think Tony Robbins got it from like Jim Rohn, something like that.
It was passed down.
It was passed down, and I will adopt it, and I live through it, and I live my life with that, because the moments when I feel like, oh my gosh, I cannot deal anymore, this is happening for me. So why is this happening? Yes. So you look more for the purpose why, because I've been through so many things that there shouldn't be a reason why anyone goes through sexual trauma, in my opinion. However, if I can find purpose behind it, then it gives me that push to keep going. Yeah. So yeah, I think that I'll live by that quote for the rest of my life.
I love that quote. Yeah, I probably said this already, but I just think it's beautiful that like in that moment, as we talked about on our porch talk, like you don't realize why certain things are happening to you. You're like, why me? Why me? It's yes, you. Like, you need to go through that because there's people out there that need to hear your voice.
Yes.
Like, not everyone can be vulnerable, but I just feel like God has different gifts and abilities for different people. And so for you, for me, for others, millions of others who are vulnerable about what they go through, like, there's a lot of lives changing. And that's the purpose of this all. Like, it wasn't necessarily for you, it was for the next person. I mean, it was for you because you had to deal with things,
you had to experience
when you go through
it.
something. Exactly. But then the beauty that comes after it, the beauty of healing, and your testimony changes lives. Like, that's the whole purpose of why we're here. Like, we all need to be here for one another. So
yeah, your test in life becomes your testimony, which is
exactly
awesome.
That's the whole thing. Like, this is all a cycle. This is how it goes. We live, we go through a lot of tough times, we help others, and then we die, and then it's like, it's just a cycle, but it's a beautiful cycle. That's the whole thing. Yeah.
I think that's something that I guess I maybe because I have dealt with very near-death experiences a few times in my life. I feel like I'm so appreciative. Like, so our porch talks, so for those listeners, it's because I literally sit in the morning, I have my breakfast in my porch, I work out there, and I have lunch. After, like, maybe at 1 or 2 in the afternoon, I'll come inside. But it's, I'll always be busy out there. And it's because I get to literally sit down and listen to birds, hear nature, feel nature. I'm so incredibly grateful for every single moment, because there was a moment in time where I didn't think that I would have that breath, that I would have the ability to hear those birds chirping, or there was so many instances in my life that I didn't know if that next day I wasn't here anymore. So I appreciate all of those little things. And so what better to, have nature and talk.
Yeah, I feel like like the act of mindfulness and gratitude literally changes your life. Like, it just changes your perspective. Like, because we're not promised tomorrow. So today, live in the now, be purposeful, resourceful in ways that you can, and practice gratitude and mindfulness. Even when all hell breaks loose, like, we need to practice those things. You need to remind yourself, okay, I have a roof over my head. Let's breathe. Let's breathe. Let's
we
live
have
in this
breath
moment
in our lungs.
That alone is amazing. So yeah, I agree with you completely. It's necessary to have those moments.
Well, my love, thank you so much for doing this. And as she's also majoring in psychology, so as we keep going, maybe we'll have you back on, because I think that having the perspective of someone that's younger, that's gone through a lot, I think it's powerful. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And friends, thank you so much for listening in today. I'm so excited for you to hear this episode. If you have any comments, find us on YouTube or comment on the podcast platform that you're listening to. Thank you so much for joining again, and I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. Peace out. Love your life.
Peace
Bye.
out.